Jack Thompson was an ordinary man. He couldn't read, but his family taught him honesty, humanity, and the fundamental values of life. A father of two, he lived in one of New York's neighborhoods, waking early each morning to try to meet the demands of the busy city as he delivered packages. The company he worked for, Swift Delivery, provided him with enough money to make a living. However, he never had big dreams. His only concern was to ensure that his children received a good education and had a secure future. We would be very happy if you subscribe to our channel, like our video, and leave a comment. This is a great source of motivation for us. Every morning, he followed the same routine, greeting the passengers who got off at the bus stop near his home and feeding two stray dogs that approached the corner of an abandoned warehouse. Named Rex and Shadow, these two dogs were Jack's most loyal friends. Whenever Jack brought food, they would wag their tails and approach him with affection. For Jack, this ritual was not just an act of charity but a reminder of life's justice. They too were struggling to survive, supporting each other in their fight. Jack had been working at Swift Delivery for years, yet recently he sensed something amiss at the company. The manager, Mark Davidson, was increasingly tense and becoming wealthier. Jack occasionally noticed heavy boxes on the delivery list that weren't supposed to be there. Initially, he dismissed these details. He was just trying to do his job. However, over time it started to gnaw at him. The manager's car was becoming more luxurious, his watches were changing, and the financial stability of the company was being shaken. Jack was sure something was wrong, but he didn't yet know what he was up against. One night, while working, late, he heard whispers coming from Mark's office. The door was slightly ajar and Jack unintentionally overheard the conversation. Mark was on the phone with someone whose identity was unclear. As the conversation progressed, Jack realized that Mark's claim of his child being sick was actually a lie. Mark was having a heated argument with the other party about sharing the profits. "I delivered the goods on time, but you didn't make the payment. I'm taking the risk here, but you're taking the profits. This can't go on like this." Jack's blood ran cold. His own manager was using their company for drug trafficking. Until now, he had only suspected something. But now that he realized he was caught in the middle of such a significant crime, a burst of fear and anger erupted within him. What should he do? Go directly to the police or gather more evidence? While thoughts were swirling in his mind, he continued to hear Mark's voice. "I'm taking the risk, but you're delaying the payments. This won't work like this. If the amount I want isn't in my account by tomorrow, I won't send a single gram." Jack couldn't believe his ears. Mark was not only using the delivery company but also threatening his superiors. Things were more complicated than he imagined. Now he had to think about not just his safety but the lives of hundreds of people. If this shipment actually carried drugs, perhaps hundreds of young people would be plunged into a cycle of addiction. A great battle started in Jack's mind. If he chose to ignore the situation, innocent lives would be ruined. But if he went to the police, he knew his own family would be in danger. How much could a man's conscience bear? He didn't want his children to grow up in this dirty world. But what would happen to him if he intervened? His hands began to tremble. He wiped his sweaty palms on his trousers. Inside him, fear was growing, but at the same time, his sense of justice prevented him from taking a step back. He had to make a decision, and the consequences of that decision could change his life forever. He quickly closed the door and held his breath. His heart was racing furiously. While fear was growing inside him, his sense of justice was also taking over. If he took a step back now, perhaps hundreds of lives would be ruined. Young people would be ensnared in the pit of addiction. Families would be torn apart, and this dirty business would continue to grow silently in the city. But what if they caught him? Mark was involved in this. And if he figured out Jack knew something, he would go to great lengths to silence him. Plus, he was putting his family at risk. The safety of his children was more important than anything. But ignoring the situation felt like betraying himself. He was wrestling with his inner voice. If he stayed silent, Mark and criminals like him would continue to ruin more lives. This drug network might be destroying the lives of hundreds, thousands of young people. Jack pictured their suffering, the despair of helpless families. Yet, on the other hand, he had his family. If Mark pursued him, he could target not just Jack, but also his children and wife. Did he have the right to put the ones he loved the most in such danger? What if his children had to grow up without him? Was it worth it to put his family at risk in the name of his quest for justice? His breath quickened. Sweat beads trickled down his forehead. He was trapped between his fears and his moral obligations. Jack had to make a decision. Either he could keep his eyes closed forever and ignore this web, or he could expose everything and enter into a fierce struggle for justice. The next day, after work, Jack quickly devised a plan. Secretly, he installed a camera in the company's warehouse to record Mark's illegal deliveries. After days of monitoring, he finally had solid evidence. However, he discovered that the operation involved not just drug trafficking but also arms smuggling. Mysterious trucks arriving at midnight, large black bags delivered to the warehouse, armed men constantly coming and going. Everything confirmed his suspicions. While reviewing the camera footage one night, Jack caught the moment Mark argued with one of the gang leaders. "Look, I delivered the goods on time, but you're delaying the payment. I know who you're distributing the weapons to. If you don't give me my rightful share, I'll leak the information I have to others." Jack's blood froze. This was going much deeper than he thought. Mark was making big money from drug and arms trafficking, and even now disagreements had begun within the gang. Jack had evidence of a much larger criminal organization. But this also put him in even greater danger. He was now confronting not just Mark, but far more dangerous people. Jack went to his manager's office, his eyes blazing with fury. "I know, Mark," Jack said with a voice that didn't tremble. "I don't have just a few photos or video recordings. I learned all the details of the deliveries, arms smuggling, drug trafficking. I know about your and your associates' dirty dealings. Either you confess to the police yourself or I will." Mark's face turned pale. His pupils dilated, and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. He put his hands on his head as he tried to catch his breath, but his voice trembled. For a few seconds, he couldn't find the words. He weighed his options while looking around in a panic, then locked eyes with Jack. Until now, he had thought he could keep everything under control, but things had gotten out of hand. He was shocked that Jack had come this far. Mark took a deep breath, opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. It was like everything was closing in on him. Finally, he spoke in a stuttering voice. "Jack, please. I've gone down the wrong path, but I had no other choice. I swear this was just a one-time thing. If you give me another chance, I'll completely withdraw from this. I'm trying to protect not just myself, but others too. But things went wrong because of money. Please give me some more time." For a moment, Jack hesitated. His conscience could see Mark's desperation, but he knew what he had done was unforgivable. "I'm sorry, Mark. This is it," he said, slamming the door behind him. Unbeknownst to him, Jack had signed his own death warrant. That night, as Jack headed home, a growing sense of unease filled him. He couldn't tell whether Mark would really give up or retaliate. After putting his sons to bed, he looked out the window of the living room. The usual silence of the neighborhood felt different tonight. The shadows were longer, and the hum of the evening felt deeper. His heart raced with a nagging sense that something was wrong. While watching outside, he noticed a car parked at the corner. The headlights were off, but there was movement inside. For a moment, he thought it could be a coincidence, but the disturbing feeling inside him grew stronger. He glanced at his children's room, wanting to ensure their safety. They were sleeping soundly, but Jack's mind was far from at ease. Wandering through the house, he went to the kitchen, trying to drink a glass of water, but his throat felt tight. His thoughts shifted back and forth between whether Mark would comply or if he'd take countermeasures. When he looked outside again, he noticed the car was still there. A wave of fear spread through his chest. His eyes felt as if they had sensed a hidden threat watching him in the night. The agitation within him was intensifying, but he couldn't be sure. The next morning, as usual, he got off the bus to go to work. Stretching lightly, he started walking, but the uneasy feeling refused to leave him. He entered the corner store to buy food for Rex and Shadow. As he walked in, he subtly checked the door's glass to see if anyone was behind him. He saw no one. But that didn't reassure him. After grabbing his bag when he stepped outside, he saw a black SUV parked across the street. Figures with shadows were sitting inside, motionless, watching him. Jack's breath quickened. His heart raced faster. He took a few deep breaths to calm down, but he could feel the gazes of the figures inside the SUV on him. He hadn't seen them before, but he sensed this vehicle's presence was not a coincidence. At that moment, he realized maybe things had come to an irreversible turning point. Jack moved quickly. He gripped his phone in his pocket, ready to call someone if necessary. His eyes scanned the nearby escape routes. Just then, the SUV's door opened, and two men jumped out, quickly approaching. The expressions on the men's faces were determined and threatening. A shiver ran down Jack's spine. His heart raced like crazy. What should he do? As the men approached him with heavy footsteps, escape seemed nearly impossible. He tightened his grip on the phone, but he might not even have time to make a call. One of the men reached into his coat, presumably for his weapon. Jack thought of his children and family. This moment could be a turning point in his life. Jack quickened his pace, but just then, two men jumped out of the SUV and quickly walked towards him. "Forgive us, Jack, but this is the end of the line." One drew a weapon. Jack's heart raced uncontrollably. There was nowhere to escape. At that moment, two shadows dashed from the bushes, lunging at the attackers. Rex and Shadow. His loyal companions attacked the assailants with wild determination. Rex bit one of the men on the arm, and the man screamed, dropping his weapon. Shadow leaped on the other man, knocking him down, his sharp claws tearing into the assailant's arm. The gun fired, but the shot missed its target. The sound echoed, momentarily causing panic. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jack kicked one of the attacker's weapons away, sending the gun flying to the ground. The men, shocked and bewildered, struggled against Rex and Shadow's fierce loyalty. Jack quickly grabbed the weapon and aimed it at the attackers. "Put your hands up," he shouted. One of the attackers lay groaning on the ground, while the other tried to flee, but was grounded by Shadow's quick reflexes. In the distance, the sound of police sirens could be heard. Jack took a deep breath. He scanned the surroundings. Everything had turned upside down in an instant, but he was alive. The police arrived quickly, handcuffing the attackers. Jack looked at Rex and Shadow, who were lying on the ground. Their eyes sparkled with the light of victory and loyalty, just like his. Jack knelt down, brushed Rex's head, and then stroked Shadow's back. "You saved my life, my friends," he whispered, his voice trembling. The dogs responded to his touch with soft whimpers, wagging their tails, tired but happy. Jack found some relief in their warmth. He could still feel his heart pounding, but when he closed his eyes and took a deep breath for the first time, he felt truly safe. As the sirens echoed in his ears, Jack confronted the dark chapter of his past and realized he had survived. However, he knew this wasn't the end. He had survived today, but who could say what would happen tomorrow? Rex and Shadow were looking at him, their loyal eyes filled with determination and trust. Jack patted their heads one by one. "Without you, he whispered, his words caught in his throat. The sky began to light up slowly. Jack looked around. He had left behind a night that would change his life. His reckoning with the past wasn't over yet, but today he had gained a small victory. He needed to seek a new beginning, for himself and for his loyal friends who gave him a second chance. Mark and other members of his gang were caught one by one. When Jack handed the evidence to the police, a large-scale gang operation began. Thanks to the evidence Jack provided, law enforcement uprooted a large organization involved in drug and arms trafficking. Weeks later, the board of Swift Delivery called Jack in. They told him that due to his courage and honesty, the company had been cleansed of its dirty dealings and its future was being reshaped. Following the police operation, the company name was cleared and employees would work in a safer environment. The management wanted to show their appreciation for Jack's determination and resolve. They offered him the position of the new manager. Jack was surprised, but a strange sense of peace washed over him. At first, he hesitated because the leap from being a delivery worker to managing a company was a significant responsibility. However, he thought of his children, considered his future, and most importantly, realized that achieving justice meant not only getting rid of the bad people, but also replacing them with the right ones. Jack accepted the offer. As he stepped into his new position, he learned that Rex and Shadow had been added to the company's security team. Now, they were the new guardians of swift delivery. Proudly standing at the entrance, their loyal eyes watched Jack. As Jack lovingly petted them, he thought, "We did this together." Now he would build a safe future not just for his children but for the employees and for a new order. Rex and Shadow were accepted into the company's security team. Standing proudly at the entrance, their loyal eyes watched Jack. A new life was beginning for Jack, not just for him but for his eternally loyal friends as well. Jack knelt down, stroked Rex's head, and then patted Shadow's back. "You saved my life, my friends," he whispered, his voice trembling. "We would be very happy if you subscribe to our channel, like our video, and leave a comment. This is a great source of motivation for us."